Welcome to this edition of the Your Weekly Dose of Nonprofit Podcast, the podcast that delivers actionable items you can implement at your organization right away. I'm your host, Ephraim Gopin of 1832 Communications. Today, I'm really happy to have with us an accessibility smarty and my friend Sharon Rosenblatt. Sharon, how you doing today?
I am great. Thanks for having me.
A pleasure. Let's introduce you to our listeners, watchers, and readers. Sharon Rosenblatt is an accessibility professional working to improve the overall experience by a user with disabilities. With her tendency to be hands-on, Sharon feels that accessibility is a right and not a nice to have. She has been Director of Communications for Accessibility Partners for over 10 years and also specializes in document remediation and web compliance testing. Her efforts have enabled developers and manufacturers to see the tremendous potential that accessibility has not just for users with disabilities, but of all abilities. Sharon is also an avid runner and looks forward to her next race that gets her up at the crack of dawn. She's been known to disregard weather forecasts as long as there is a finisher medal to be obtained. In today's episode, we're going to discuss website accessibility. So let's dive right in. Sharon, how do you define the overall term accessibility?
So accessibility can mean a lot of things to different people. In my biz, we like to define it as the equitable use of technology by people with disabilities, not so much the equal use. People with disabilities access technology in a number of ways via what's called assistive technology, right? So somebody who's blind might use a screen reader, which has speech output for text, so it becomes audible. Somebody who's deaf may have captions on video. Somebody who doesn't have limbs may use another type of assistive technology. But as long as they're all getting the information of your web content the same way, then it's accessible so that the same purpose, whatever you created your content for, gets to your user in the manner that you want it to. It doesn't matter how they get the information, but as long as the information is retained and they get the right action items that you want, then it's accessible.
Okay, fantastic. So by law, does every nonprofit site have to be accessible for people with disabilities?
So I'm only going to speak to the United States. A bunch of countries have their own regulations. It's tricky here in the States. The Americans with Disabilities Act, which was enacted just about 30 years ago, actually, now that we're in 2020, requires that any place of business that's open to the public, and we can just look at nonprofits as a business here, must be accessible to people with disabilities. So you could kind of think of braille buttons onto elevators, wheelchair curb cutouts so that people can enter the building, ramps in lieu of stairs. But now that so much business and information has been taken online, that's been looking, the Americans with Disabilities Act has been looking to expand towards the digital space. And when I say the Americans with Disabilities Act, it's not like it's this one person, right? So the Department of Justice here in America covers the Americans with Disabilities Act, but it's really enforceable when it's brought up by a complaint. So we've been seeing in the United States a tremendous uptick in lawsuits starting in like the late 2015 really till now, where somebody who has a disability can't access the information on a website. They may sue or they may bring up a complaint. What's missing right now is the handshake between the Department of Justice and the Americans with Disabilities Act saying that, and this is a ton of legalese, so this might be where your listeners fast forward to the next one, but what's missing is where the Americans with Disabilities Act has been updated to specifically include web content and say, these are the standards that you must adhere to. A bunch of the lower courts have said, yes, your website has to be accessible. Yes, we're using these international standards called the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, and it has to be up to here. I mean, we've seen a ton of businesses and, even some education places, higher learning, e-learning, that says it has to be accessible. Nonprofits would fall in that same space if you're covered by the Americans with Disabilities Act of a public space. So my short answer is be accessible to the best of your ability to avoid a tenuous answer of why you would be covered in the first place. And hopefully, as laws progress, the Americans with Disabilities Act will be brought up to the 21st century and start including web technology.
Okay, so 20% of the population has a disability. That means if your nonprofit website is not accessible, you're losing the chance to reach quite a few potential donors. Yeah. So today's actionable item, could you please tell us 3 things a nonprofit can do today to make their site more accessible?
So the first thing I recommend to all of my clients is reach out to anybody you know who identifies as having a disability, or even have a focus group and have them just run through your website, run through your email marketing and see how easy it is for them to donate, and then listen to their feedback and then work with your development team to make that happen. The best feedback you'll ever get is from the users themselves. Don't try to just assume, you know, a typical user experience of a person with disability, because nobody accesses technology the same way. I mean, think about how we check our email. We can, you know, do it on a computer, on a desktop, on a laptop, on a mobile phone. So it all changes. After that, some of the two easy fixes that I think would be best tailored for nonprofits are caption your videos or any of your multimedia content, especially if it's going on Twitter, if you have any sort of video appeals. That is always good, and especially if people want to watch your video, but they're in a loud place and they might not need the captions in a regular day, but they could, you know, still want your message and they might not watch it otherwise, and then they'll forget later. And the other thing is a bit more technical, but label your form fields, say for donor forms, if you want people to give you money. This kind of goes into the code level, but properly labeling form fields if a user is blind, or even using the tab key to navigate if they're not using the mouse, will ensure that the form field names are read back to them so that they're inputting the proper information. Not putting the proper information means that the form might get some errors and you miss out on a donation. So definitely look into that.
Excellent. All three of those are very important, especially that last one when it comes to...
I knew people would want to hear about the donation. I could give you 33 more, but...
those three for starters.
Episode 2.
Yep. At Accessibility Partners where you work, what does an accessibility audit include, and what could I expect to find in an accessibility plan?
So when you reach out to a company like Accessibility Partners where I work, I'm your first line of defense. I am the loquacious and delightful communications person. So what we do is we'll scope your website. We have a full bevy of accessibility engineers, both with and without disabilities. We'll look at your website. We'll learn from you the type of user paths, user interactions to get a good idea of what your website is all about. From there, we'll you know, go through the mumbo jumbo with the procurement, if there's any proposals, purchase orders, blah, 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 blah. Once we're engaged, we will test a website using those assistive technologies that I brought up, like those screen readers. We'll use refreshable braille displays, Zoom, and we'll look for any sorts of areas that don't adhere to those accessibility standards that I brought up. Typically what's called the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, WCAG. So we'll look for deficiencies there. Some of these deficiencies could include those unlabeled form fields I brought up, uncaptioned videos, but could also be a low color contrast, right? So somebody who has low vision, if you have a light color on a light background, they might not be able to see the text. Images without alternative text. So this is for any non-textual content like images, charts, graphs, that on the back end in the code level can have an image describer so that somebody who has a vision impairment can have that image read back to them and that content is there. Some of the other things we look for are keyboard accessibility, right? How well your website can be navigated just by the keyboard alone. A bunch of users don't use the mouse. Some people have trouble using a trackpad, so they will rely on keyboard only usage. We'll look at other things, making sure that elements are properly labeled. If you have buttons on your website, they are labeled so that if you hit submit, if you're blind, the button reads back submit or it goes to the right place. There's a bunch of other things, but we'll really look for, you know, the user experience as a whole. Accessibility has a lot of nitty gritty in it, and it's so easy for some folks to get like who run an automated crawler, right? Which is an easier way to do this, but then you get a whole list of issues that don't make sense. But we look at the user experience as a whole and kind of want our clients to understand, hey, this is impacting how your user does this. This isn't just limited to one page, but now they can't read your blog content because it's all pictures and videos and it's inaccessible. So our deliverables at the end of an accessibility audit include a comprehensive gap analysis report where we'll break down those issues and say where they don't adhere to those standards, but also the real life ramifications. And then if our clients want to, we can run through the results with them, help them with recommendations to remediate, to make those fixes, and to really understand the perspective where we're coming from. Because our engineers have disabilities, these are the obstacles that they're running up into, and then this is how you can blow through that and make the content accessible to everyone. And so many of the fixes are redundant. And when we explain it to our clients, like, oh, of course that makes sense. Like, why wouldn't we want, somebody doesn't want to tab through 75 items just to get to our main content. Here's how to reformat your menu. And yeah, maybe they'll get to the donate page a little faster that way.
Important. Given your experience, does the online experience still have a ways to go before the disability slogan of "nothing about us without us" becomes a reality?
Oh, wholeheartedly. I think the disability movement, I think accessibility has a lot of great exposure. And I don't think web developers or anybody truly wants to discriminate against people with disabilities. I don't think anybody wants to think of themselves as shutting the door. But time and time again, when I talk to computer web developers, they're not teaching this stuff in schools. It's usually maybe a side note, maybe a guest lecture about accessible programming. And technology is leaps and bounds advancing from where we were just a couple of years ago. So every time I think accessibility makes a little bit of a threshold, something like TikTok comes out, and then it's like, oh great, one more thing for people to caption, and they didn't learn how to caption on YouTube, so how are they going to learn how to caption on TikTok? So I think the exposure is there. I think people really want to do the right things, but right now accessibility is an afterthought. So many of these website builders have to be prompted to include commands to make their sites more accessible, like that alternative text. I mean, Twitter just unrolled a bunch of things, and so did Facebook, but it's only been in the last couple of years, and these platforms have been around for much, 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 much longer. And people with disabilities do use technology. I mean, everybody wants to, order on Amazon, but that experience can mean a lot of different things for anyone else. So got to keep looking into that.
Got a ways to go.
Definitely.
Okay, let's move on to the lightning round and learn more about you. How did you get started in the field of accessibility?
So this is a fun one, and for some of your loyal fans, they might see a bit of a crossover story here with my origin story. So when I was about to graduate college in 2010 at the University of Maryland, I was reading through, we had this listserv. I don't know if listservs like this still exist anymore, but whatever. Looking for some just local jobs so I can make some money before I graduated. And I saw a job listing for this woman who wanted a personal trainer. And I wrote back to her and said, yes, I had my own car. Yes, $15 an hour sounded wonderful. And yes, I love to run, and I will be active with you and get you to get off your butt and work out. So I reached out to this woman, Dana Marlowe, and she really liked my email. And as we worked out, she helped me beef up my communication skills. And I was brought on as an intern for the company Accessibility Partners, which was only 1 year old by the time I joined them. They just started off, and everybody was kind of doing a little bit of everything. So I could start doing the dedicated communications, and Dana could do more of the business development, which flash forward a bunch of years led to a full-time job for me and Dana's eventual creation of a wonderful nonprofit, I Support the Girls.
Mm-hmm. I've heard of that nonprofit.
Yeah, I felt like you might be a little familiar with them, but that's another podcast for another day.
Correct. We'll have Dana on this podcast.
Oh, good.
If you could shake up one thing in the business world, what would it be?
So I don't love the idea of business hours, but I have to be careful about that. Like the phrase close a business, I know typically means like 5 p.m. wherever you are. I like the idea of working when it's convenient for you, as long as you get your stuff done, but respecting boundaries, because I don't want somebody emailing me at 10 p.m. knowing that I work sometimes at 10 p.m., but expecting something then. So I think it's a nice handshake of, flexible hours, but with boundaries to personal life. And always clear communication. That's my motto in personal and professional life.
I love both of those, yes. You've run marathons just about everywhere. Favorite city or state you've run through so far?
So my favorite marathon that I've run, just because I haven't done the Boston Marathon yet, and I know that is a hometown favorite for you, would be the New York City Marathon. Nothing quite like that, going through all the 5 boroughs. But my favorite state that I've run in is actually Wyoming. And I don't think those two could have been more different. But seeing a sunrise in Wyoming is probably the most religious experience I've ever had. And people like me don't go to Wyoming very often, but I was, for the first time in my life, stunned into silence. And that hasn't happened in years. So if you get a chance, run through Wyoming. You will not regret it.
That's very cool. The best and worst part of remote work?
I think the best part is that you get to set the dress code. I mean, you have no idea what I'm wearing under the shirt or whatever. We'll just leave it like that. I think the worst part, I feel lonely sometimes. I've always worked remotely, so I found ways to deal. But I do get used, I get sad when I see some of my friends going to workplace happy hours and other sorts of team building events. I haven't seen some of my coworkers in 5 years. And we every single day. I mean, I talk to these people more than I talk to my family, but it's, it can be a little bit lonely sometimes. So you have to find ways to manage that.
Totally understand. Why Connecticut?
I love Connecticut. I when I saw that question, I'm like, why not? But I had to think about it because not everybody sees the state the same way I do. Wherever you live in Connecticut, you are always like an hour away from the beach, an hour away from skiing. You could be in New York City in 2 hours. You could be in Boston in 2 hours. It's got everything. It's got great seafood. And we invented pizza and hamburgers. And oh my gosh, I forgot about that. We have ESPN headquartered in central Connecticut, and that was the first sports station, television station the world has ever seen. So you're welcome, podcast listeners, for ESPN. We did that.
The pizza and hamburgers thing also, I didn't realize that about my home state, but now that I do know, it's even more bragging rights for Connecticut.
I mean, I don't think anybody outside of Connecticut believes it, but it's been pretty indoctrinated in us, so I can't think any otherwise.
I believe it. Let's turn the table. You get to ask me a surprise question that I don't know what's coming. Go ahead.
So I did a little stalking on you, and I went to your website and I dug deep into the About Us and then about our founder and then the quirky facts about our founder, and I saw that we share a favorite movie of The Wizard of Oz. And I hope that's still accurate because I'm going to roll with it if it's not. If you had to hire any of the characters from The Wizard of Oz as an intern for one summer and you had to keep the character as is, who would you hire and why?
Okay, A, fantastic question. B, excellent stalkage. C,
I love stalking.
It's The Cowardly Lion. And I'll tell you why. It's my favorite movie. This is just based, as a kid, seeing there was that magic of it going from black and white to color. And I remember seeing it the first time on TV as a kid watching it and just, wow. Because I had already seen, I'd already seen a couple of movies in the theater, so I knew it was in color. This was just different. And then it's the whole storyline and the characters themselves. My uncle does a perfect impression of the Cowardly Lion.
Oh my.
And he sings, and If I Were King of the Forest and Rappamin's Elephant and the whole thing. And I've been around this uncle enough, even as an adult, we will sit around I'm in my 30s or 40s, he's in his 60s, and we're singing the song together. So there's just something about that song. But number two, he is the Cowardly Lion, but he does get over himself. And, so as an intern, I don't need a coward. I actually need a self-starter. That's the truth. But on the other hand, I would love somebody who can figure it out and then go do the work. So he was king of the forest. He was scared. Now he's not. So, I would go with the Cowardly Lion if I had to choose. The ones I wouldn't choose would be the Flying Monkeys.
Oh, God.
Mind you, they do get the job done. Okay?
I was going to say you have a whole trove of minions there.
That's true.
They're evil, but effective.
That's very important when it comes to getting the job done, but probably not best for those team building exercises and happy hour get-togethers you were talking about before. I wouldn't go with them. But the Cowardly Lion for sure. Who's your favorite character in Wizard of Oz?
Oh my gosh. I've always loved Glenda. I don't know if that's like 6-year-old girl in me. I just felt like, when I was writing my question for you, I'm like, she's the one who I would get done because she's going to teach me lessons about myself. And she would be that fun, plucky intern who would end up teaching me more than I would teach. And she would just, tell me, I'm like, you know what? You had the power in you all along to get your own coffee. That would be nice. I need somebody to talk to me like that.
I like that. Sharon, thank you very much for appearing on the podcast today.
Oh, thank you. This was fun.
An absolute pleasure. You can learn more about Accessibility Partners at accessibilitypartners.com, and you can connect with them on Twitter at access_partners. Have a great day, Sharon.
Thanks so much, Ephraim. Take care.
You too. Have a good one. Bye.